You're listening to Mentoring Developers. I think that it's important for us to recognize that you were starting out and you kept good relations, and that helped you to get your first contract. And it's very important. If you're going to leave a job, don't leave on bad terms.
Oh my God. I totally agree. That's very important. I remember I was petrified of telling my first boss at HP that I was going to leave, that I was quitting. I really didn't know how to tell him, and so I sat him down, we sat down together. I told him. He said, "Oh, okay, I understand." Because for him, he's a manager. He understands people come and go, and that's a normal part of the corporate world, and that's in part why corporations work the way they do, because people are, to some degree at least, interlocking parts or interchangeable parts. But I left on very good terms, and leaving Time Warner, as I said, I left on excellent terms with people. Look, and the U.S. is a big country. Israel's a tiny country. I think total we've got like 8 million people living here. And the computer industry is very small. Everyone knows each other. I mean, to some degree or another. And if you are not nice to people, it will haunt you. It really will. So besides just the ethics of being nice to people, practically speaking, be nice to people all the time, but even when you leave, because you never know who is going to be hiring, who is going to be talking to whom, and you don't want to get the reputation as that guy who's impossible to work with.
It does create a problem, though. In my mind, it's really a good principle to live by, that you should be nice to people, and it's very easy when you're getting along. It's hard when you're not getting along, but even so, you have to watch your language, and you have to make sure you don't send any nasty emails as you're leaving, so that people still have a good opinion of you. You may encounter them. Even if you live in a large country like the United States, there's still this other problem, which is, what if that person is against you because of your cultural background? Maybe because of your ethnicity, maybe because sexual orientation. There's this real problem we talked about in the pre-interview about cultural fit. And so what we have to do as senior people, as managers, as people who are running a team, to understand that people have biases. This is natural. If one person is biased against the other, no matter what the other person does, sometimes it's hard for, there to be harmony, and take things with a pinch of salt. And we have to, as senior people, as people with a little bit of authority and power over junior developers, we have to open our hearts up a little bit, I feel, have some empathy. And if somebody's doing something that doesn't fit with our own idea of a cultural fit and a little bit different, we have to give them the space, because I think in a professional environment, our personal biases, we should leave them behind. And I want to give the message to people who may have felt that they have had, biased treatment because of perceived a real, racial bias or whatever, that they don't have to please somebody that is being oppressive. If you're a woman and you're being sexually harassed and you are leaving a company and that person is bothering you, you don't have to be nice to them. So given that caveat, I think in general, we can say that it's always good to be on good terms in a professional environment. But I think as people who run teams, I would say it's very important. It's on us. The onus is on us to make sure that people are comfortable, that we don't create an environment where one person has, too much authority over the other, when their bias can come into play. What do you think about that?
Right. Look, I'll tell you, first of all, I'm just, and again, this testifies to my naivete, I think. I'm just always perplexed that these sorts of biases would exist. And I mean, I'm not saying I'm not biased, because everyone has their own built-in biases. But, the out-and-out racism, sexism, whatever that I hear about, I mean, come on. That's just ridiculous. If you want your company to succeed, if you want your team to succeed, you're going to want to hire the best people. And best, of course, is comprised of several different dimensions. But one of those dimensions should not be what is this person's ethnic, religious, cultural, sexual background, right? Those are all secondary, tertiary, if they enter into it at all. If someone is treating you inappropriately at work, though, I don't know if being mean to them is necessarily the right response, even if it's maybe the natural response. The problem is, like, let's say you're at a big company or even a medium company. There's probably a human resources department, and they are there to help you. When I was at HP, the HR people were super, super nice to me, not with any biased things. Like, it was just when I was leaving. And they are there not necessarily for the company's interest, although, I mean, obviously they're company employees, but really to help the employees as much as possible. And they did help me with when I left. They said, if you leave 3 days later, then you get your stock options for like this quarter. And I was like, okay, I'm leaving after those 3 days, that sort of thing. And they even try to help me in terms of finding work and healthcare and all sorts of other stuff. So if you are experiencing any sort of bias, it's totally inexcusable, and you should go talk to your human resources department. The problem, of course, is what if you're in a tiny company, or you feel like you don't have any other options in terms of work? And it's easy to say that in the computer industry, lots of people, you'll have lots of work options, but it's not necessarily true. And that's a terrible situation to be in, right? You never want to be in the situation where you feel trapped and you can't leave a job, even though they're treating you terribly. And then maybe, right? Maybe you have to not. I mean, I'm not saying you should accept abuse or harassment of any sort, but maybe it's time to even be mean and point this out as opposed to talk to someone else about it. It's difficult. It's difficult, and I think we hear, on the one hand, we complain that the computer industry is not diverse enough, which is, I think, a reasonable complaint. On the other hand, I think we're discovering why that some of the folks in it don't want it to be more diverse, even though there is so much room for everyone. As I said, there's like an insatiable demand right now. Anyway, I think that's it's a difficult. Look, I'll tell you. I mean, we're working in Israel, and here I don't want to open up like too much of a kettle of worms. But like in Israel, we also have minorities of different sorts. We have Arab minorities, we have women, we have different religious groups, and yet, who are the employees at most of the high-tech companies? It is typically the Ashkenazi, the European descended Jewish males. That's changing over time, just as it's changing everywhere. But you see it. And I was just at a company teaching last week where they happen to be in an area of Israel where there's a very large Arab population. And so I was very happy to see there were a lot of Arab employees. Right? It's not even a question there. Clearly, they're going to hire the best people for the job, regardless of their ethnicity. But I think that there's partly a bias against hiring them elsewhere, and partly it's sort of self-reinforcing, where people are only going to go where they know other people, and so they're not going to go where they don't know anyone.
Yeah, and that's always going to be present. Thank you so much for listening.
For show notes and transcripts, visit us at mentoringdevelopers.com.